I grew up seeing my mom speak in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like, as I got older, I had to kind of reflect on that. How in the world did she have so many people to pay attention to her and hold their attention? And from her speaking in front of people, that's how she became known, like all down south, basically from North Carolina all the way to Florida.
Yeah.
But the thing is, she never taught me. She never taught me. I didn't.
You didn't think about it until later, did you?
Exactly. I didn't think to ask. I didn't think that. Yeah. I didn't really think that it mattered. It's not like I took it for granted. I just didn't think that I would want it.
It's just natural. That was that was like me with my dad, right?
Yeah.
I never asked him, like, how does he run his business? How does he find clients? How does he do it? I never asked him any of that stuff, But looking back, it's like, man, it would have been really cool to have that conversation. Granted, I was a teenager at the time, and I was probably thinking about this stuff, and I probably wouldn't have listened anyway, right? But it's really cool to see your parents, especially when you start seeing your parents when you're an adult and you're going through your own shit. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss or not. But if you're going through your own stuff, right?
You cool.
All right. You're going through all your own stuff, right? And then you reflect, you're like, man, my parents were probably going through some of the same stuff when they were my age, right? And thinking back on that, like, I wish I could talk to them about this, right? And make it not feel weird.
Yeah. So how was your transition from getting out the Navy to going back into normal population and getting into entrepreneurship? How was that? How was your transition coming out?
Man, dealing with civilians is hard. I'm not gonna lie, right? Just like that. You go from being on a boat surrounded by 100 people, whether you like them or not, they're your family, right?
Yeah.
Because you're stuck with them. You can't go anywhere. You see them every single day. You're sleeping in the same room. You're eating meals at the same table every single day. They become your family. And so you're so used to that. And then you get out in the world. And the other thing is, whether you like the people you're in the service with or not, their capabilities. That they're at least capable of doing the job. Whether they do a great job or not is up for debate in some cases, right? But at least they're capable of doing the job. You know what training they've gone through. You know that they've qualified if you see the insignia on their chest, right? But when you get into the civilian world, you have no idea. You have no idea if somebody's gone through certain training, if they've had a certain education, what their background is. You have no idea what their qualifications are in certain areas. And so you take that stuff for granted. And you also take for granted the common language that you have with your brothers and sisters while you're in, right? Like, I can talk to you in a certain way and you'll totally get it, right? But I go talk to somebody else that way and they're going to be offended. And they're going to think I'm making fun of them, right? When in reality, it's just like, hey, that's just how we talk. And so, I think a lot of vets struggle with this. It's like that loss of that brotherhood, so to speak, right? When you leave that. Now, I got lucky in the sense that I went to work for a company that had roughly 75% veterans as employees. And I got a chance to hang out with some of them and do that. So I had that. I also had some other friends that got out around the same time as me. And so we kept in touch. But it's never the same, right? You probably still have friends from when you were in, and you're probably still close with them, but you haven't been able to rebuild that bond with somebody else, right? So that transition in and of itself is really hard. And I would say the saving grace for me was that I got a job at a company that did value veterans. Didn't just say it, but they actually did. They actually valued them. They'd hire them. They'd make that like generally their first choice in hiring was a veteran. But secondly, I had a job that gave me some freedom and autonomy to really figure out who I was, right? You go from when you're in the military, you're being told what to do, how to do it, where to do it, when to do it, when you're allowed to go to the bathroom, when you have to shower, when to eat, everything. And for a lot of people, that transition away from that is really challenging. For me, I embraced that. I was like, thank God, I'm finally done with that. I can actually do things on my terms, my way. But there was, the pendulum swung a little bit too far, right? I actually got in trouble for being too lazy because I was like, well, this is an easy job, no big deal. I can get the job done in half the time. People didn't like that too much. But I was able to then really focus in on my studies, right? Personal development, like the stuff I was telling you about earlier, really learning the things I wanted to learn And so that started taking up a lot of my time and attention and allowed me to slowly ease, I guess, into the civilian world. But I also didn't have to go into an office, which is like, that was huge. Anybody that has to go from being in the military and dealing with that to going into a regular office surrounded by civilians all day long. Oh man, I don't know how you handle that one. That one's a hard one. I was lucky I worked from home.
It was tough, man. I did 8 years at Bank of America. It was tough, man.
Oh man, yeah.
I got to a point where I was like, I just can't do this no more. You know?
Yeah. I feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time, right? You know, because you can talk shit to somebody in the service. I mean, I was on subs, so I even talk shit to officers, right? And at the end of the day, it's like, all right, you know, we're still in this together. Yeah, you're my superior, and I respect you for that in a certain way, but still, you're kind of a shitbag sometimes. So, you know, but you have this like common way of dealing with that stuff.
Yeah. If
I said any of that stuff to anybody in the civilian world, oh man, like forget about it. You're getting written up and you're getting fired and you're getting red card or whatever, right? It's like, oh, geez. And I couldn't handle that. Like I can't handle with people's feelings. I'll give you a funny story about this. So I became a manager in corporate America. At the time, the company was doing about $100 million in net profit, right? To give you a size of the company. And we were the owner of our company. We were a subsidiary. Our parent company was the 100th largest company in the world, all right? And so we had 50-something thousand employees, and we did these leadership things. They call it FUEL, Future Leaders of America, or Future Executive Leadership, something like that, to show how much I paid attention. And so I got through this whole program, and I'm going through, and they're doing this coaching and training with you and helping you become a better manager, leader. And at the end of it, they're like, yeah, Jeff, you did amazing on almost everything. Like, you seriously off the charts everywhere except for this one area where you like didn't even register, and you need to work on this a lot. And they're like, you got to work on your personal sensitivity and your interpersonal connectedness. I was like, why? You know, they're like, well, because good leaders have these traits and abilities. I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. So, you know, my interpersonal sensitivity, I think that's what they called it, was so low that they're like, yeah, we don't know if he can actually be empathetic with his employees, right? And so that speech I was telling you about, where I was giving a presentation in front of 250 people, and mind you, like 70% of the room at this time is vets. And I'm giving this presentation, and the guy that hired me, my regional vice president at the time, his name was Frank, and Frank gets up there and introduces me as the only guy in the entire company who is less sensitive to their problems than he was. Right. So my introduction was, here's a guy who really doesn't care about you, but go ahead and listen to him anyway. I was like, thanks, Frank. That's a great way to introduce me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. I told